The Savior of the world, the King of Kings, could have emerged from any tribe of Israel. However, he came from the line of Judah, a choice rich with prophecy, symbolism, and divine purpose. But why Judah? Why not Reuben, the firstborn, or Joseph, the beloved son? Was it a random choice, or was there a divine purpose behind it? What set the tribe of Judah apart that God selected it as the lineage for the Messiah, rather than the other tribes of Israel? The Bible's sacred genealogies develop like a masterful story, revealing God's divine plan through the centuries. When we follow Jesus' journey from Abraham to David, one name jumps out: Judah. Why is this tribe so important in the Savior's genealogy? The story starts with Abraham, the father of faith, who was selected by God to be the head of a powerful country. Abraham had two prominent sons: Isaac, Sarah's promised son, and Ishmael, Hagar's son. Isaac, the father of two sons, Jacob and Esau, was the recipient of God's covenant. In a strange turn of events, Jacob purchased the birthright blessing that was traditionally Esau's as the firstborn. This crucial event signaled the start of an incredible journey for Jacob, who would later be dubbed Israel and father to the 12 tribes of Israel. One could anticipate that one of Jacob's sons, Reuben, Simeon, or Levi, would take the helm and continue the messianic line. The oldest, Reuben, lost his position through an act of dishonor, lying with Jacob's concubine Bilhah on his father's bed. Then came Levi and Simeon, whose uncontrollable rage drove them to murder and deceive a whole city as payback for their sister's violation. They were disqualified from leadership and received a severe warning from their father for these acts. Judah was left, not the oldest or most favored, but God had selected him for a role that was much bigger than anybody could have imagined. Here, the messianic prophecy starts to take shape, emphasizing Judah's pivotal position in Jesus' lineage. Among Jacob's sons, Judah was a surprising contender for greatness. He made his share of mistakes and missteps, just like his brothers. But as God's perfect plan came to pass, Judah was selected to be a key part of Jesus' lineage. When Jacob, the patriarch, assembled his sons to bless them prior to his demise, he said something that would be remembered for generations to come. "The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nation shall be his," Jacob said in Genesis 49:10, in reference to Judah. These words held great meaning, indicating that Judah would give birth to a royal bloodline that would eventually produce the Messiah. Many people understand the phrase Shiloh to refer to the imminent arrival of the Messiah, a ruler and leader unlike any other. And Jacob didn't stop there. He compared Judah to a lion in Genesis 49:9, stating, "You are a lion's cub, Judah. You return from the prey, my son." Like a lion, he crouches and lies down like a lioness who dares to rouse him. The tribe of Judah was inextricably linked to this striking metaphor of the lion, a representation of power, bravery, and majesty. As the lion's image becomes more significant throughout the scriptures, it symbolizes the leadership position that Judah's descendants were meant to occupy. Jesus Christ, who is described in Revelation 5:5 as the Lion of the tribe of Judah, is the final fulfillment of the relationship. In this powerful vision, John sees the root of David, the Lion of Judah, victoriously standing, a triumphant reference to Jesus. The lion has represented justice, wisdom, and an unparalleled capacity for leadership throughout biblical history, in addition to its physical might. Judah's selection as the ancestor of the Messiah highlights God's unwavering faithfulness in carrying out his promises of salvation through this royal lineage. In Genesis 49, Jacob foretold about Judah, describing a lineage to which countries would submit, authority, and a scepter that would never leave. This was more than just a blessing. It was an assertion of heavenly power and a hint of Judah's destiny as the Messiah. When we examine Judah's loyalty and its crucial part in God's plan of salvation, the theology behind this decision becomes clear. King David, who was known for his fierce loyalty to God, was descended from Judah. God made an eternal covenant with David, guaranteeing that his throne would last forever. This covenant foretold of a future messianic king who would rule forever. It wasn't simply about David. Judah itself means praise or worship of God, indicating a strong bond with heavenly authority. Judah has consistently maintained its devotion to God throughout its history, making it ideally situated for the arrival of the Messiah. The Levites were selected for the priesthood, and Joseph's family had important benefits of their own through Ephraim and Manasseh. Each of Jacob's 12 tribes had a unique share in forming Israel's identity, but Judah stood out for reasons that went beyond its unique characteristics. The words that Jacob spoke to Judah as he assembled his sons for his last blessings reverberated through the ages like a celestial echo. Each word was loaded with prophecy, sowing the seeds of authority, power, and regal status that would eventually lead to Jesus' coming. However, let's take a moment to consider the wider picture. Joseph's narrative is one of the most striking examples of how human choices and divine providence weave together to form the tapestry of God's plan. Father's beloved young Joseph, wearing a garment of many colors that virtually shouted "favorite child," and his brothers were so envious of this sign of preference that they plotted his murder. But Judah stepped in at a time that would change the course of history. How could we even think about killing our own brother? Judah's question cut through the anger and jealousy that surrounded them. He suggested selling Joseph to a caravan of Ishmaelites as an alternative to murder. Although the decision spared Joseph's life, it accomplished far more than that. It marked a turning point in the divine story. Judah's choice led Joseph to Egypt, where he rose from a slave to a ruler and ultimately saved many lives during a terrible famine. Although this turn of events reunited the family, it also solidified Judah's place in God's plan. Judah unwittingly safeguarded Jacob's bloodline by saving Joseph's life, guaranteeing that the scepter would stay in his tribe until the coming of Shiloh, the prophesied Messiah. Even though Judah's intervention seemed small, it had significant religious implications that echoed throughout history. It was not just about protecting Joseph. It was about preserving a legacy. This act of preservation, along with Judah's later leadership, prepared the way for Jacob's blessing to be fulfilled. The scepter would not leave Judah until Jesus Christ, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, assumed his position as supreme ruler. Similarly, one of the most complex and surprising events in Judah's history is the tale of Tamar, which is told in Genesis 38. Judah's daughter-in-law, Tamar, was caught in a web of both emotional depression and cultural expectations. After marrying Judah's sons, and Onan, both of whom sadly passed away, Tamar was left childless. In the Levirate tradition, Tamar was supposed to marry Judah's youngest son, Shelah, so that she may have children and carry on the family line. Judah, however, hesitated because he was afraid Shelah might end up like his brothers, which put Tamar in a difficult situation. When Tamar saw that her future was slipping away, she came up with a bold and clever plan. She waited along Judah's path while posing as a prostitute. Judah went up to her without knowing who she was, and they made a deal. Judah had no money, so he left his staff, cord, and seal as collateral. This choice would come back to haunt him. When Tamar's pregnancy became apparent months later, Judah was furious and thought she had committed a sin. In a shocking turn of events, Tamar showed the objects Judah had given her as evidence of their meeting. When Judah realized the gravity of his actions and how he had broken his word, he said, "She is more righteous than I." Tamar gave birth to Perez and Zerah, twins, from this complicated and unlikely connection. Perez would go on to play a significant role in the Messiah's lineage. Divine providence often molds lives for a bigger purpose in a subtle way. Ruth's story, which takes place in the fields of Bethlehem during a period of famine, is one noteworthy chapter. The Moabite widow Ruth might have simply gone back to her tribe after her husband died. Rather, she took an unbelievable decision to remain at her mother-in-law Naomi's side, promising to follow her religion and be a part of her destiny. It was a loving and devoted act that would change the path of history. Ruth unknowingly became the center of God's plan as she labored in the fields to support the two women when they returned to Bethlehem. There, she attracted the attention of Boaz, a good-hearted and upright man from the tribe of Judah. When Boaz saw Ruth's commitment, he gave his slaves instructions to be kind to her, even letting her pick extra grain from the fields. Naomi insisted that Ruth follow the ancient levirate tradition, which allowed a close cousin to redeem land and marry a widow in order to preserve the family line. Ruth did what Naomi asked. Boaz took the initiative and became Ruth's husband and heir apparent in a dramatic act of redemption. Their union became a crucial link in the heavenly chain that led to the Messiah. David, the shepherd-turned-king whose rule represented God's lasting bond with Israel, would eventually come from their bloodline. When God first appointed David to lead Israel, he was a humble shepherd. Jerusalem prospered during his rule, and God assured him that his line would produce an eternal king. This promise served as a reference to Jesus Christ. Even though Solomon's reign was prosperous, the monarchy eventually broke up, but Judah's heritage persisted as the vessel for the Messiah. It's amazing to see how Judah's role was fulfilled. The scepter of leadership stayed securely in this tribe, as the prophets predicted. Judah was not chosen at random. Rather, it was a purposeful move by God to fulfill his promises and prepare the way for Jesus' earthly mission. Judah's genealogy is a representation of continuity and loyalty, and not just a historical narrative. It demonstrates how, even in the face of uncertainty, God's plan works out flawlessly. These prophecies were fulfilled in Jesus Christ, which shows how wise and loving God is. When we reflect on Judah's story, it's difficult not to be amazed by the greatness of God's plan. Don't you find yourself questioning how complex and meaningful God's designs are, even in our lives?